Well, good morning to all of you. And as I just said, which is always weird when you walk out and you're the one on the screen, right? We do encourage you to continue to think, continue to talk, continue to pray about what God might have you do to contribute to the Be More offering. Throughout this season, we highlight this. Throughout the rest of the year, if you've been around Fearless, we don't talk a lot about money. We have a heart here that we never want someone to feel obligated to give, to feel pressed to give. We only want people to respond to what it is that God is saying. So when we do talk about an offering, it's always for something that goes outside these doors. And so all of our Be More offering does go to serve in our local community and church planting and making disciples, but also around the world as we reach unreached people groups and try to plant churches there as well. So you have through the month of December to continue to go online and you can find out how to give and if that is right for you and your family. All right. Well, I don't know about you. It's hard for me to believe that we're already in the first Sunday of December of 2022. I feel like we were just in December of 2021. And some of you are excited, though, about this time of year because you love Christmas. You started decorating in August. You know that. There are some of you who have a little more temperance. I get that, too. And so you say, hey, there's a date when I start my decorating, or there's a certain date that's appropriate to listen to Christmas music. And then there's another group of you who say, I would probably jettison it all if I could come December. Listen, there's all kinds of different pros and cons to the holiday season, all kinds of different ways to look at it, different feels for different people. There are some people, honestly, wake up in December and all they think is, man, it is colder. Truly, I mean, it is damp, it is chilly. Not only that, it's dark. I get up in the morning and I go to work in the dark and I get in my car and I come home at night in the dark. And the worst part is if you ever leave your car outside in a parking lot, in the driveway, occasionally you have to scrape it off. It is a cold time of year. Some of you look at that and you think, no, it's cozier. Yeah, I come home in the dark and you know what? That's why I have flannel sheets and footy pajamas and a fireplace and a book and hot chocolate sitting on the couch, blankets everywhere, right? This is a cozy time of year. For some people, it's busier. It's an addition of activities. A lot of things kind of jump in front. Christmas activities, maybe it's decorating. You're doing things around the house. You've got family stuff, extended family, close family. If you've got kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, they have recitals, they have concerts, they have shows. And if you have multiple kids, you have multiple concerts and multiple shows. It's busier. You're like, no, it's merrier. And you know why it's merrier? Because my kids have multiple shows and multiple concerts, and I get to decorate the house, and I have all this activity. How about this one? It is expensiver. And I know what you're thinking. That is not a real word. Your bank statement says otherwise. We give gifts. It's big things. It's the secret Santa things at work or at school, right? Sometimes you have to go out to different dinners or you're doing hospitality. It's year-end teacher gifts. All these different things cost money. It's expensive. But really, it's big-hearteder. Some people would say, no, this is my chance. It's not that I have to give people gifts. It's my opportunity to actually get to give people gifts. I get to bless other people. I get to help people in need. I get to surprise people with generosity. Listen, it's Christmas. No matter what lens you look through, one thing is true. It rings true almost every holiday for every person, regardless of your feel, and it's this. This season is often complicateder. It just is. You got schedules, yes. Relationships, yes. Finances, yes. But on top of that, you've got emotions that jump in this time of year. You've got expectations. You've got traditions. You have things that you have the rest of the year. But for some reason, in this moment, in December, things get heightened, and you're so much more aware of what's happening. It's complicateder. And in the middle of it all, what I think everyone would say, I wish I could have, is not complicateder, but simpler. And it's not because you want to jettison Christmas. You're not necessarily thinking you want to just get rid of all of the things that make Christmas Christmas. You don't want something lackluster. You don't want to lack spirit or joy. You don't want to give up on the festivities of all of Christmas. No, you want simpler. Simpler means you want something purposeful. You want to, when you're in the middle of these things, feel more present. You want something meaningful. You want something memorable. Ultimately, you want that. You want a simpler Christmas. And if that's what you want, or if it's something you ever thought you might want, this series is for you. This series is for you. We're here to help, starting today. Today and for a couple more weeks leading up to Christmas, we're going to talk about helping you celebrate and enjoy this idea of a simpler Christmas. We want to help you consider some things where you might better manage your time and your schedule, how you might better manage people that creep into your life this time of year, how to manage some of the traditions and the expectations that surround the season. So this is really about practical, kind of down-to-earth, helpful tips, reminders that everybody needs to hear this time of year. And so we're going to kick off today by considering a reminder about maybe how we would manage our time. Something that will speak a little bit to our calendars and a little bit to our schedule during the holiday season. And here's why. Because it goes without saying that how we spend our time influences how we experience Christmas, for good or for bad. How we spend our time, it's how we experience Christmas. It can certainly be a busier time of year, no question. There are additional things that jump on your schedule. Sometimes you put them there by choice. Many times other people put them there by their choice. But it's not just your additional activities, it is those additional people. We joke about it, but there are certain people that you will only see this time of year. Extended family, even friends, maybe even coworkers that you don't normally spend time with show up and you end up spending time with them at Christmas. You have these additional relationships. And what happens during the season is we don't remove anything, we simply add things. And so when it comes to our time, we just put more in the pot, right? We kind of pack it in, we put it on top and kind of fill in all of the cracks. And not long into that, it becomes a bit of a balancing game. And for all of us, it doesn't take long to become out of balance. And nobody's immune to that, because no matter how well prepared you are, no matter how scripted you are in your holiday, things just seem to jump on the schedule. You ever deal with unexpected things at the holidays? A lot of unexpected things, sometimes urgent things. And if something is unexpected, especially if it's urgent, guess what? It pushes its way to the front of the line. That's what happens. And we react and we respond to the things that are in front of us at the moment. We start to get distracted, and before long, we start to spread our time thinner and thinner. And inevitably, when that happens, there's stress and there's strain, and it kind of creeps into our life. And the things that we care about the most starts to actually get the least amount of our attention. We stop giving our best time to the people and the things we care about most. And it's not that your world comes crashing down. It's not that it's a crisis in December, but here's what happens. You start to drift through your days. Have you ever felt that? You drift through another day, and then another week, and all of a sudden it's a month, and you might wake up in early January and literally think to yourself, what just happened to the holiday? And that drift goes on and on. Listen, all of us are prone to drift in the holidays. It's a universal challenge to stay purposeful, to stay present, to find meaning in the middle of the season. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to spend our best time, because it's going to influence how we experience Christmas. And so today is all about one reminder. I'm just going to make it very simple. It's one reminder. It is one word of encouragement. Ultimately, today is just one challenge that I think will serve all of us well if we're looking to have a simpler Christmas. And the challenge is this: we in this season, we need to take the time to refocus regularly. We need to build in this habit of refocusing, and we need to do it over and over again. In other words, we set a habit, we set a pattern of life that is allowing us to set our hearts and minds on those things that matter most. And I'm going to say this right up front because I recognize what some of you are thinking. This is not a revolutionary concept. We said it already this morning, right? Jesus is the reason for the season, right? Well, how do we lose focus on that? It's really not that simple. We know that's true. But then I think to myself, if I know it's true and I know it's so obvious and I think I've got this, how come I continue to drift and I walk through my days in an aimless, non-present fashion? How come year after year I fall into the same trap and the same habits and I find myself waking up missing major moments of what's in front of me? Listen, today is not about new information. It's really not. Refocusing regularly. It's not new information. It is a reminder that we've got to set in front of ourselves. It's an important reminder, but I'm glad that we have an example to turn to, and that's what we're going to do today. Jesus himself, that one who is the epicenter of Christmas, Jesus himself prioritized this right here. Jesus set an amazing example for us as a man who refocused regularly as he walked on the earth. You may already know this, but the Bible has what we call 4 Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. 4 writers, 4 individual writers, and they write about the life and times of Jesus. Why? Because we get 4 perspectives about who Jesus was, the things that he did, the places that he went. And if you look through the Gospels, what you'll see is that Jesus actually had to deal with a lot of things that you and I have to deal with. Jesus had activities, had a lot of people, he had a lot of expectations, and he had to, just like we do, work very intentionally to maintain some kind of sense of balance in his busy days. And I really do believe that some of Jesus' secret sauce was this right here. How did he maintain balance? Because Jesus set the tone when it came to refocusing regularly. I'm going to pick on one story today. The gospel writer Mark, he writes about a very busy day that Jesus had. And to set the stage, Jesus is with some of his disciples. They're in the city of Capernaum. And we simply read this. It says, when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue. And it says, he began to teach. Now, if you know anything about the Jewish culture, Sabbath day was a day of rest, right? Great, no work. In fact, you were kind of banished from having to add workload. But that wasn't true for Jesus. He was a rabbi. In other words, he was a sought-after teacher. And so for him, he went to work. It was a work day for him, and so he went to teaching in the synagogue. And if you were to read the narrative in Mark, you'd find out it was actually a very difficult day of teaching, because in the midst of that, he got interrupted. There was this guy that showed up. He had all kinds of issues, and it kind of became a thing in the middle of everybody else. So he stopped his teaching. He handled this guy, went back to his teaching, ultimately finished up his morning. And that's just how things began. From there, it was supposed to get easier, because as soon as they left the synagogue, it says they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. And presumptively, they take that walk, they head over to some friend's house, just like you might when you leave here thinking, I'm going to go home, I'm going to get some food, I'm going to get some downtime, maybe I'll take a nap, I'll probably turn on the game, right? I don't think they turned on the game. I don't know what Simon and Andrew's cable situation was. Probably not great. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever. So they get there and plans are about to change. His mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and guess what? They immediately tell who? They tell Jesus about her. So fresh off of this full morning of ministry and care, Jesus is now called back into action. It's something that is unexpected, and in this case, it's very urgent, and it takes priority. And again, some of you know how that feels, walking back into your house and finding some unexpected and urgent things. And so Jesus does what Jesus does. Instead of taking the downtime, he spends time healing, comforting, managing this friend's mother-in-law, and most likely everybody else in the house. And with all of that stuff behind them, they finally sit down, they do have a meal, and you think it's all settled in, but it says that evening after sunset, so Sabbath would run right up till sunset, and as soon as sunset hit, that kind of meant Sabbath was over, and it says as soon as sunset, people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. In fact, it says the whole town gathered at the door. Sometimes I think my life is busy. Then I ask myself the question, when's the last time an entire city showed up at my door unannounced, right? See, Jesus knew firsthand. He knew firsthand this experience of activity and busyness and expectation. Jesus had a front row seat to the pressure and demands of life. And in the face of it all, he did what he often did. He served. It says that Jesus healed many with various diseases. He served people. He was selfless, he extended himself, he worked hard. He had a lot of these kinds of days, a lot of full days. A lot of you have a lot of full days. You've got a lot of things on your calendar, and yet you serve. You do. You serve people around you. You care for people around you. You extend yourself. You go to work. You are a good employee. You are a good student. You put in the work. And so Jesus stood there in the middle of this, realizing, I have got to be careful. And as we stand in our busyness, we know that we have to be careful. Jesus had to be careful that he did not drift. And so he had kind of this conscious idea that he needed to be refreshed. He always seemed to know in his heart that he needed to find the rest and get refocused. Jesus needed to refocus regularly, and that's exactly what he did. It says very early in the morning, so right after the heels of that day, he said, well, it was still dark. He got up, he left. He left the house, and he went off to a solitary place, and he prayed. Jesus intentionally stepped away. He took a breath. He took a moment. He said, I'm going to refocus. He said, I'm going to spend some time with my Father. I'm going to spend a few minutes with God because I know I need it. And again, that's Jesus, the Son of God. You see, and Mark shares this story, this one particular story as an example, but if you were to walk through the Gospels, I'm going to do it briefly, you'll see that this is not a strange occurrence for Jesus. This is not an isolated event. In the same Gospel, Mark says there was a time there were so many people coming and going that that means Jesus and all the people with him, his core disciples, they didn't even have a chance to eat. Some of you reconcile that as well. Didn't even have a chance to eat. And Jesus said, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place to do what? Get some rest. In other words, let's get out of here. And they did. They went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. Jesus got tracked by religious leaders all the time, came under intense pressure and scrutiny and expectation. And it says that Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake. Major decision-making time. Jesus had to figure out who the 12 closest followers were going to be. Some of you know the story. Jesus chose 12 individuals that he was going to walk with for a period of years. But before he do that, he said Jesus went out. He went out where? To a mountainside to pray. He spent the night praying to God. He got refocused before that decision. Another time, a tragic event occurred. One of his best friends, ministry partners, John the Baptist, was killed tragically. And it says when Jesus heard what happened, what did he do? He withdrew. He withdrew by a boat to a private place, to a solitary place. Over and over in different places, we see this experience. It was not an isolated event. People came to Jesus all the time. They always had something they wanted him to do. He was there and available to help them and to serve them. But Luke says it very plainly, Jesus often withdrew. He often withdrew to lonely places, and he prayed. Jesus made it a very clear priority to step away, to get in focus, to connect with God. If he needed to make an important decision, that might be a moment to reconnect. If he needed to process his emotions, he stepped away to connect with God. If he needed to care for his own soul, find rest, deal well with other people, if he needed to just break away from the noise, he stepped away. In other words, taking these moments, taking these times intentionally to connect with God, they helped him to live well. They did. They helped him to continue to live well, and more importantly, it helped him to love well. It set him up to deal well with the people in his life. And the truth is, he not just refocused, he had to do it regularly. Why? Because all of the energy, all of the people, the activity, the expectations that came at him on the front end, guess what happened when he stepped away and came back? It was still there. Still there. Back to the original story, he did get up and he left early and he went to a solitary place and he prayed. And you know what? They came to find him. How's that for a rest break, right? Simon and his companions, they went and they found him. And when they found him, they just said, aren't we glad you're resting? No, that's not what they said. They said, everyone is looking for you. Everyone is looking for you. Listen, the busyness, the activities, the people, they're going to be there on the front end. And after you're done reconnecting, they're going to be there on the back end. And that's why we need to keep doing it regularly. And all of those things in our life, they're not bad things. The activities in our life are not the bad things. We put them on the calendar. Other people put them on the calendar, but they're worthwhile. They're useful. The things we do with friends, the things we do with family, the things we do to serve and honor others, those are good things. People are not the problem either. Yes, people come with expectations. Yes, you have things you need to care for in your life. They're not the issue. The real issue is that all of that, the activities, the people, the expectations, it could cause drift. That's what it does. It simply distracts us from the main thing, and it pulls us away from the stuff we care about the most. And Jesus, I think, really knew that. He understood it, and he said, I'm going to get away, and I'm going to refocus regularly. And I think by doing that, he's saying, so should we. So should we. We should regularly, consistently, periodically spend these moments with God. Because we as a people, we do need this space to refocus and get reset. We need to step away from some of the distractions of life and the noise around us. And if we do that, it will help us to do what Jesus did. If we step away from time to time to connect with God, it will help us to live well. It will help us to make some better decisions about where we spend time and energy. It will help us center on things that matter most, and it will help us to love well. It will help us to better interact with the people in our lives that we care about. You see, Jesus prepared us for the Christmas season. He said, you need to refocus regularly. So the question really is, if we want a simpler Christmas, how can we do this? How can we do this? What does this look like for us? And I mean in today's world, like in the real world, right? Some of you might be thinking, I like this idea. I like the idea of stepping away. In fact, I would love to just get up in the morning someday and walk out of my house and leave it alone and take a retreat for a while. But we all know it's just not that easy because you cannot wake up and just not go to work. That doesn't work. Some of you have scheduled travel. A lot of you have very real obligations. Some of you have family you have to care for. You've got kids that live in your house. You've got aging parents. You've got people at work. You've got demands. It's not like you're just going to skip everything. You're not just going to bypass everything in the Christmas season and jettison all of that for the sake of your time away. So how does it really work? Does it have to look just like it did for Jesus? I don't know if you noticed this. I'm like, Jesus always has a boat at the ready. Did you notice that? Some of you in the room right now, you're like, yeah, this is a great message. We're going to get a boat for Christmas. That's the takeaway. No, right? He's always finding a mountainside. There's no mountainside in Ohio, so what does this look like? Well, I'll tell you this. I think it's possible to find key time and key moments with God, but it doesn't have to look just like it did for Jesus. I don't believe that. Those gospel writers, they highlight specific times, specific moments where Jesus did take some concentrated time away. They describe for us something that Jesus did. But in the way that Jesus did it, that is not a prescription for us. It's not about how he did it, it's why he did it. And that's the prompt. The prompt is the why. It's the big idea. It's about taking intentional moments. You and I, in today's world, finding intentional moments, even small ones, where we connect or reconnect with God. And hear me, I think there's intense value in taking extended time away for renewal. Go ahead and do that if you can. For some of you, you may even have a daily set time that you carve out to be with God. But I'm saying there are ways for all of us to connect with God in the middle of an actual, real, sort of busy kind of day. And sometimes I think even those small steps, those small, regular moments to connect with God add up to something important. One, I think it can actually create habits for us. Finding small moments in the day to connect with God creates a habit of connecting with God. More than that, it allows us to get refreshment in and throughout key moments of our workday, our school day, and our family life. And so as we kind of walk into the finish today, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer up kind of a simple, practical idea. Simple, practical idea. And you can connect with God in this way. And you can take it or leave it. In other words, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm simply giving you an idea to get your wheels turning. What would this look like for me in the holiday season? So here we go. I'm going to encourage you to do this somehow over Christmas. I want you to add something, and I want you to subtract something. I want you to add something and subtract something. And I'm going to explain this. So here's what I want you to add. I want you to think about your day, and I want you to figure out how can you add something that serves as a reminder to connect with God. That's the addition. I want you to add something to your day that serves as a prompt and a reminder that I am going to be intentional about connecting with God. But then there's a subtraction piece, meaning there may be something in your current life, your current schedule, your current habit that you need to remove so that you actually have the space to connect with God. In other words, there may be something you want to swap out, something you're currently doing and you want to do it a different way or with something new. So, for example, you want to add something, right? Here's a suggestion. Add a physical reminder somewhere in your life during the course of the day. And again, we go back to a classic, a Post-it note, something as simple as that. Could be a Post-it note, can be a sticker. Put a sticker somewhere where you'll see it. Maybe it's on your coffee mug, maybe it's on a water bottle, somewhere where you are regularly, intentionally. If you want to see it in the morning, because that's when you need to connect with God, put it on the mirror in your bathroom. Put it on the dashboard of your car, so every day when you get to work and you're in the parking lot, you see that thing there. Put it on your desk. Put it on your computer screen. Set it somewhere on your TV. Do something, and it's just a bright pink piece of paper, yellow, whatever it is, and when you see it, it doesn't even have to say anything, but what does it say to you? Oh, that's right. I need to take a moment and maybe connect with God, and maybe that moment is now. And again, hear me, when I say connect with God, I don't mean go off and drive off in a boat. I'm saying it might be 30 seconds right there. You're just like, I'm going to pray for these 30 seconds. I'm going to connect with God for 1 minute. I'm just going to stop and push pause and put my phone down and take a moment. So physical reminder, set it somewhere. Maybe you wear something. Put one of those plastic bracelets on, right? If you have favorite earrings, wear favorite earrings. I don't know, it's a piece of clothing. Get a big tattoo on your forearm. Just something tasteful, right? Something that when you see it, is that reminder that I want to connect with God. Physical reminder. More than that, how about a digital reminder? Most of you have one of these. I don't know how many times a day I look at this thing. Probably 540,000. I don't know. But but I'm always looking at the lock screen just to see what time it is. How many of you know that you can change your lock screen, right? Find something, just a picture, a graphic. Maybe it's a text, a scripture, anything. Something on your lock screen, and every time this thing flashes in front of you, it just says reconnect. It's just a reminder throughout your day. Maybe you got a watch, you can program that, right? Put it on your watch face, put it there. Maybe set an actual reminder, like set an alarm. Some people do that. They set an alarm on their phone. They set an alarm on their watch. They set an alarm in the house somewhere, and maybe it goes off at the same time every day. And you may or may not be able to, in that moment, connect with God, but it is that reminder again that pulls you out of whatever you're doing to say, oh, that's right. I want to be intentional about this. Set it for a lunch break if you're at school. Set it for a coffee break. Set it somewhere when that alarm goes off. You know you have 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, to stay connected with God. Do a digital reminder. Better yet, do a personal reminder. You want to take it up a notch, phone a friend, right? Add someone to your list. Swap with somebody. It could be somebody in your house, or maybe it's somebody else in your life, and just say, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to text you. Maybe it's not once a day, but maybe it's once a week. And I'm just going to text you, and I'm literally just going to say, have you reconnected? That's all. Have you refocused? Okay. And maybe they text back. You text them back and forth, and it's just a reminder, a reminder, a reminder. So add that. Add that. If you don't, what will happen? It will escape your mind. It is so important to add something because reminders are needed. They naturally serve to break us out of our typical habits and routines, all the things that we do. Otherwise, it will fall through the cracks. So add something. But then on top of that, subtract something. Subtract something. In other words, you need to find some actual space to connect with God. And I know in the course of a busy day, it can be difficult to do. So here's what I'd encourage. Maybe it's a swap. Maybe you just say, hey, something I normally do, I'm going to do it in a different way. So for example, I drive in the car a few different times a day. So I commute every day here. I commute to work and I commute home. 15 to 20 minutes each time. I like to listen to sports radio. Any other sports radio people, right? ESPN, ESPN2, PGA Tour, NFL. Like I got it all, right? I've got a full plethora of that. Some of you listen to talk radio. Some of you put podcasts on. Some of you listen to books. What if I subtracted that? Not all the time, but maybe just once in a while. So just on my commute in the morning, what if I turned the radio off? You ever sat in silence in your car before? It's kind of a strange experience. But you sit in your car, and maybe it's only a 5-minute drive, but it might be a 30-minute drive. And if you sit in the quiet, I realize it's not a deep, intense time to connect with God. You still have to drive. But the reality is, in those quiet moments, you can refocus. You can connect with God. You can pray. You can meditate. Maybe you just put on some worship music instead of listening to what it always is. And maybe that's your routine for 1 week. Just change that routine. You subtract whatever it is you're listening to, and you swap that out for some time of quiet or some time of worship. Maybe you do it with your workouts. Maybe you go for a walk. Whatever you put in your earbuds, whatever you're always listening to in your headphones, change it up. Swap something out. Subtract something you always listen to. Put on something else. Some of you may actually physically want to fast for a meal. What do? Subtract a lunch. It's not a huge deal. You don't have to fast for 40 days or anything like that. But maybe for a once a week or something like that, you decide, hey, instead of having lunch today, like I always do, I'm going to go out and drive and grab something and come back home. No, I'm going to sit at my desk, or I'm going to sit where I am, whatever that happens to be, and I'm going to take those few minutes. Instead of eating today, it is a current reminder that I want to connect with God. And so you get refocused by fasting. Some of you make a morning coffee run. I'm just giving you ideas. Again, you don't have to do these, so I'm going to step on some toes. Now, you make a morning coffee run. Like you go to Dunkin', you go to Starbucks every day. That is a routine. That is your habit. And maybe you're one of those people that sits in that drive-thru for 15 minutes every day. And every time you're in the drive-thru, you're on your phone and you're checking texts and you're doing emails and you're doing this and you're checking your Facebook. You're doing all of that. Don't do that. Sit in the drive-thru moment. Now, don't skip your coffee. Don't do that. Don't do that. That is not a good habit. But while you're spending that time, redeem the time. Take those 15 minutes at the drive-thru and say, I am going to let this be my time of quiet. It may be as simple as every stoplight you hit, instead of immediately, I don't know if you don't do this, I realize. There are other drivers that actually look at their phone while they're sitting at red lights. Don't do that. Don't pick up your phone and start scrolling. Let every 30 seconds to 60 seconds at a red light be an opportunity to say, God, I'm here, I'm listening. Say something. God, here I'm focusing on you. I've got to deal with this later today. I just want to pray about this just for a moment, right? It sounds so easy, but you do have to subtract something out of your daily habit, your daily routine, and insert something else in it. And you may need to pull out some things, social media. You may need to pull out some time on your apps. You may need to pull out some time binging certain shows. You may need to pull away from some things so that you can insert some things. You have to subtract something in the season to give yourself some space. So you add something. In other words, make yourself a reminder that says, I want to connect. And then challenge yourself to find something unique to you that just might say, hey, once a day, it might be multiple times a day, again, just for 30 to 60 seconds to say, I'm going to reconnect with God in this moment. Listen, what were to happen if we were to do this? If we were to take these 1 to 2 options over the course of 3 to 4 weeks and deliberately reconnect with God in the course of the holiday. If you did this every day in some way, do you think it might change your attitude? Do you think it might change your decision making? Do you think it would change some relationships? If you took a moment and you actually reconnected with God, would it change the way you interact with that guy at work? That girl at work, that neighbor? Would it change the way you respond to your parents? Would it change the way that you respond to your kids, right? Would it change the way that you interact with the people in your life? Would they notice a difference? I think they would. I think they would. If we refocused regularly, if we took the time to connect with God in regular intervals, I don't think it would make for a perfect trouble-free Christmas. But I do think if you took the time to refocus regularly, you will be glad you did. And I think there will be somebody else that is glad you did as well. And so let's not wake up in January and wonder where December went. Let's try to stay focused and connected on the things and the people that matter most in the season. Let me pray for you.